Dear President Basescu, dear Chancellor, dear Angela, dear Prime Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. I want to welcome among us the former Prime Minister of Lebanon, Mr. Fouad Siniora, the former Minister of Foreign Relations of the Palestinian Authority, Mr. Nabil Saad, the founder of the Ennahda Party, Mr. Abdel Fattah Mourou, and Monsignor Gregory III Laham, Patriarch of the Greek Catholic Melkite Church of Syria. Dear friends, our political family has 16 out of 27 heads of state and government. The permanent president of the European Council, the president of the European Commission, the plurality of commissioners, and the strongest group in the European Parliament belong to us. Hence, we have an enormous responsibility. We have to lead Europe out of this crisis. We have already achieved a great deal. The euro is safer today than 1 or 2 years ago. A banking union is underway, but there is no reason for complacency. For more than 3 years now, we have been struggling with the #1 priority of European politics: restore confidence, reduce deficits, regain competitiveness, and steer the Union back onto a path of sustainable growth. I emphasize the word sustainable, because this is where we differ most from our political competitors of the left. We know that growth is not something that the government can decree. Growth is created not by governments or the European Union. Growth is created by the citizens who act in a stable and predictable framework. To create this framework, market confidence in politics has to be restored. And that means fiscal consolidation and economic reform. In the long run, it means a stronger economic and political union. Dear friends, all this will not be possible without also a change of the treaties. We know very well that this will take time. But in the meantime, we have to address the democratic deficit that is widening as the Union develops stronger economic governance. We can do so in the next election by offering clear political alternatives in the light of the question, who will be the next Commission President? We have not only been the driving force of integration, but we can look back on 3 successive victories since 15 years in European elections. Since 2004, the Commission President was nominated, taking into account the result of the elections. In 2009, we were the only political family to nominate a candidate before the election, José Manuel Barroso. The Socialists, Liberals and Greens could not come up with an alternative, neither before nor after the European elections. I am pleased to see that at least the Party of European Socialists has finally made a commitment to put forward a presidential candidate. Nevertheless, I am concerned with the ethos that the President of the Socialists is displaying. Instead of welcoming President Barroso's call, Mr. Stanishev launched a personal attack against him with ridiculous jibes, accusing him that he looted our idea. Dear friends, we need to trigger an open European political debate that actively involves our citizens across the Union. We will establish, as EPP, an open, transparent, and competitive process for selecting our presidential candidate. Let us seize the moment to create a genuine European public space. The Union will never succeed if it does not become a truly democratic union. In the words of President Barroso, Europe cannot be technocratic, bureaucratic, or diplomatic. It has to be ever democratic. Mes chers amis, nous avons pris la mesure des développements qui se produisent.
Dear friends, we all have seen what happened at the European Union's borders. In the Western Balkans, this region has become our priority. Some 250,000 war victims from former Yugoslavia, and there has been genocide there. We want to remind you of this. We have opened up an opportunity for these countries to integrate into Europe. Croatia is preparing to join us, but the Balkans are still suffering from this illness, this disease, and the consequent effects of nationalism, as well as a chronic inability to reconcile or reform their institutions. From now on, we need to work harder to encourage dialogue and reform, to speak out about the dangers, and to encourage regional cooperation, especially between the member states of our family. But I'm wondering, for those of you who remember about the wars of former Yugoslavia, just a few miles away from the borders of Europe, dictators who massacred their people. And when we think about Syria, what has the Security Council of the UN done? They have been paralyzed by the veto of their members. So to the Libyan, Jordanian, Iraqi, and Turkish authorities, we would like to express our most sincere support. These authorities need to welcome hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees. Dear friends, the Arab Spring is a concern. The Arab peoples and their quest for freedom should not frighten us. On the contrary, it should encourage us that this is a historic development which heralds a partnership between the north and southern banks of the Mediterranean Sea. This partnership is underlined by common values, respect for different identities on the different sides of this sea within Europe. However, there are still many questions. We are asking ourselves about the religious intolerance and the impact on Christians in the East. Others are wondering whether Islam is compatible with democracy. And still others are concerned about the repercussions that these developments could have on conflicts which are still ongoing in the Libyan and Palestinian regions. These are legitimate concerns, and it is our role to tirelessly work in our dialogue with these new Mediterranean democracies. We must be aware of our differences. We must underline our fundamental principles. This is the thread which we have running through democracy and human dignity. And if we are to be concerned by the plight of Eastern Christians, it's because they demonstrate in the East and outside of the Middle East the challenge that Christians have to overcome. Freedom and diversity are so valuable. There are universal principles which need to be guaranteed. The right to freedom of thought, the right to the freedom of belief, the right to the freedom of religion. Everyone, whether they're called Pierre, Joshua, or Mohammed, everyone can pray to God. They can lose their faith or find it without fearing that they will come under attack from religious fundamentalists who are attacking Christians, Jews, and Muslims. However, it's a human interaction which will help us overcome this. To the Marseille Congress, we invited around 20 young people from North African countries and the Middle East. At the first session of the conference with them, the discussion was of excellent quality. Dear friends, the European People's Party family were the founding fathers of our current union, and they came up with the idea of the Eastern Partnerships. I want to sound the alarm bells. What happened to the hopes following the revolutions in Ukraine and Georgia? In Georgia, does anyone have ears to hear the cries of the population? The Austrian writer Arthur Schnitzler spoke about how the Rose Revolution fell. Then there was the Orange Revolution. We need to question ourselves about this. Of course, democracy won in Georgia. President Saakashvili and other parties in that country behaved in an exemplary fashion during the elections, and when announcing the results, they showed their statesmanship and political maturity. Of course, democracy won, but unfortunately, look at the methods which their opponents have used. An opponent who amassed huge amounts of wealth to buy support and create a climate of mistrust in Georgia and abroad. What should we think about the complacency displayed by the European liberals? Dear friends, the Eastern Partnerships and this ground where two opposing systems are meeting, which are incompatible, the democratic model, respect for the rule of law and fundamental freedoms, which has led to the success of the European project, and the authoritarian model, which still reigns on Russian soil. We need to encourage and support the first model. When I see the speed at which things are going backwards, when I also see the battle which our friends have had to wage in Moldova to promote European ideals, isn't it time to give these countries a clear European prospect, which will marry the willingness shown by some of them to join the Euro-Atlantic area, their level of development, and their ability to integrate into the European Union? Dear President Saakashvili, our party and our group, our teams, Joseph Daul and myself, we have fought with everything we have had, more than ever, to support you and the candidates from your party during this difficult and unfair campaign, which seems like something from another era, to promote our values, the values which are at the foundation of the European Union. Unfortunately, we've been unsuccessful, but believe me, We will work even harder to support you during this new phase, which will lead you up to the next elections. Dear friends, let us not forget the Rose Revolution in Georgia. Thank you.